Diane Abbott.
To ask the Secretary of State for the Home Department to make a statement on Shamima Begum, the death of her son Jara, and other cases.
The Secretary of State for the Home Department, Secretary Sajid Javid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we estimate that over 900 people left the UK to engage with the conflict in Syria and Iraq. Many have been killed fighting, some remain there, some have returned, others could still come back. Some irresponsibly took young British children with them. Some had children whilst they were there as part of their mission to expand the so-called caliphate. We have made it very clear since 2011 that no British citizen should travel to Syria. Those who have stayed until the bitter end include some of the most devoted supporters of Daesh. One of the ways we can deal with the threat that they pose to the UK is to remove British citizenship from those holding another nationality. Since 2010, this power has been applied to around 150 people of a range of nationalities. Mr. Speaker, it would not be appropriate for me to comment on the details of an individual case, although clearly the loss of any child is a tragedy. But if I may, I will address some of the issues that have been raised. First, these decisions are made very carefully. Where citizenship deprivation is being considered due to national security concerns, decisions are based on advice and intelligence from the security services, from counter-terrorism police, and specialist security and legal officials in the Home Office. When people dedicated to keeping our country safe give an informed recommendation, any Home Secretary should listen very carefully. Second, we are unable to provide support to British nationals within Syria as the UK government does not have a consular presence there. Third, the status of a child does not change if their parents' British citizenship is subsequently revoked. Mr. Speaker, there are no easy answers. I must also think about future conflicts and the precedents that we set. I don't want any more children brought into a war zone because their parents think that they will automatically be bailed out no matter what the risk. But the UK is doing all we can to help innocent people caught up in this conflict. We have committed £2.8 billion to Syria since 2012, our largest ever response to a single humanitarian crisis, and we are on track to resettle 20,000 vulnerable refugees who have fled the country, with our national resettlement programmes resettling more than any other EU member state in 2017. Of course, I understand the public interest, so I've asked my officials to expedite the publication of our next transparency report on disruptive and investigatory powers, including the most up-to-date annual figures on the deprivation of citizenship. This government remains committed to protecting our citizens around the world, but I will not shy away from using my powers, those powers at my disposal, to protect this country.
Diane Abbott.
When she was 15, Shamima Begum made a very bad decision. And it is arguable that much of the tragedy that has engulfed her since then flows from that decision. It is also the case that she has in recent times made some reprehensible statements in the media. But the Home Secretary will be aware that on this side of the House, we believe that she and her baby should have been allowed to return home. Now we know that baby is dead. We believe she should have been allowed to return home because this schoolgirl, born and brought up in Bethnal Green, was Britain's responsibility. And as it happens, this is the general view of the President of the United States. But above all, bringing the mother and baby home would also have given the baby a chance of life. Instead, the Home Secretary, in the face of a media outcry, chose to strip Shamima of her citizenship. The Home Secretary will be aware that many authorities contend it was done illegally because she was not a dual national. I can only repeat Article 15 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has a right to a nationality. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality. Does the Home Secretary accept that the child was British? Does he further accept that the British legal system does not hold children responsible for the wrongdoing of their parents? Does he also accept that, despite what ministers have said about the dangers of sending officials into the refugee camps, aid workers, doctors and journalists go backward and forward into these camps all the time? Does he further accept that by stripping Shamima of her nationality, he made it impossible for her to fulfil her duties as a mother and bring her baby home to a safe place? And can he confirm, as he said earlier, that as well as taking legal advice, he also took advice from the police and the security services about desirability or otherwise of bringing Shamima home? Can he explain to the House why he deemed this 19-year-old girl with her not quite 3-week-old baby more dangerous to Britain than the hundreds of foreign fighters that have already been allowed to return? We now know that there are other British women in these camps who've been stripped of their nationality by his predecessor as Home Secretary, the member for Hastings and Rye. Can he give the House an assurance that he will work with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to see how best these British children's rights can be protected? His decision in this case has caused widespread concern and alarm. We understand the issue of keeping British people safe, but this was a British baby who is now dead. And I put it to the Home Secretary. Nobody on this side of the House condones.
What did he do? Stupid man.
Yeah.
Order. Mr. Wallace, please, I respect your governmental responsibilities and the seriousness with which you take them, but I do appeal to you just to listen to the exchanges. You can always look wise, that's not very difficult for you, but it's best for you just to listen. And as to the order, as to the PPS sitting behind you, Mr. Hoare, you're a junior member of the House, trying to come to terms with your responsibilities as a parliamentary private secretary. Your role is just to sit there and to nod or shake your head in the appropriate place. That is your role. That is your responsibility. It's not for you to sit there giving a running commentary on the performance of the Shadow Home Secretary. I have not the slightest interest in what you have to say, and you will say no more in the course of these exchanges. I shall have to ask you to relocate yourself. Diane Abbott.
Hear, hear.
This is a very serious matter, and it's unfortunate that the Treasury bench don't seem to take it with the seriousness that it deserves. And let me say to the Home Secretary, finally, nobody on this side of the House condones what Shamima Begum did, the choices she made, the things she said. But does the Home Secretary accept that if it was his 19-year-old daughter, however badly she'd behaved, however reprehensible or near criminal her choices, would he want her to bury 3 babies in the course of a year? The Home Secretary has a responsibility, of course, to protect the British public, but he also has a responsibility to appear just and fair in the eyes of the British public. And this decision, which has led as night follows day to this less than 3-week-old baby dying, does not appear just or fair to the majority of the British public.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, first of all, one thing I will concur with the Right Honourable Lady. Of course, the death of any child is a tragedy, wherever that takes place in the world, and it's not something that anyone would want to see any member of this House. This government is committed to protecting British citizens, but it is very different when it comes to a war zone where there is no consular presence. That is a fact, not just under this government. It has been factual under successive governments, and it's true for many other European countries. For the same reasons we don't have a consular presence, they don't have a consular presence. So whichever British citizen in Syria, in that war zone, that the Right Honourable Lady might be referring to, whether it's a child or it is an adult, but especially in the case of a child, as much as someone might want to, if there is no consular presence, there is no way for British authorities to provide any type of assistance. So this issue is the Right Honourable Lady is trying to make this issue about British citizenship. It is not about British citizenship, because one confirmation I can give, I think one of the questions the Right Honourable Lady asked, it is the case that if there's a child that is born to someone who at the time the child is born the parent is a British citizen, that child is a British citizen, even if the parent's citizenship is subsequently removed. What this is about is not about citizenship. It is about the ability to help, the ability of the British state to help. For the British state to send in any officials, whether they are Foreign Office officials or others, into Syria in the war zone, it would be risking their own safety of those officials. And that is why the Foreign Office has been very clear ever since 2011 that no British citizen should travel to Syria under any circumstances, because it is incredibly dangerous. And that is the view also taken by almost every other liberal democracy, that when it comes to even the children from their countries, their own citizens, when it comes to Syria. The Right Honourable Lady also suggested that when it comes to the citizenship deprivations, that somehow the government is making decisions and making people stateless. She actually quite rightly stated that would be illegal. It would be illegal under international law. So that means that no such decision can be made, whether it's by this Home Secretary, by my predecessors, by previous Labour Home Secretaries. No decision under international law can be made unless the Home Secretary is satisfied, based on expert advice, that that individual will not be left stateless. Mr. Speaker, the death of any British child, even those children born to a foreign terrorist fighter, of course it is a tragedy, but the only person responsible for the death of that child is the foreign terrorist fighter.
Mr. Kenneth Clark.